Welcome back. Welcome in. This is Country Roads Confidential at earsports.com. We are part of the Paramount Podcast Network. I am Mike Casaza, welcoming in Chris Anderson to talk a little bit about conference realignment. It's inevitable. It's also kind of prohibitive because you can't talk about things you really don't know about right now, which doesn't stop people from talking about it. Good or bad for our business, Chris?
Good. Is that all we do is talk about it, Mike, you and I.
Have we learned anything since UCLA and USC? I don't know if that was aftershocks of Oklahoma, Texas. That was just about a year ago now. I know that's its own earthquake that's going to have aftershocks, but since then, have we learned anything about the present, the future, what's going to happen, what could happen?
Well, it seems like, yeah, they're more focused on moving towards that kind of, I guess, mega conferences, which is what has been theorized for quite some time. Hey, is it just going to be instead of there was the 6, now it's a 5, and then maybe instead of the 5, maybe it's a 4, and how consolidated are these conferences going to be? And I think that's where, with this UCLA USC move and then the ensuing chaos and all the rumors that came out afterwards, it seems like there are certain people, certain schools, certain programs that are trying to make a four conference thing happen. I think, that would include the Big 12, the vast majority of the Big 12, maybe all the Big 12, certainly the Big 12 heads. And even, the ACC, with all their talks, all these talks of merging Big 12, Pac-12, ACC, Pac-12 alliances and backup alliances and everything else, it sounds like they're looking for 4. And then you got the people who, and sorry for those that might not like to hear this, the ones that actually have the power right now, the ones that have the leverage right now, the Big 10, the SEC, they want 2. They only want 2 conferences. And when one side has all the leverage, they tend to get their way.
Let's think out loud for a second, okay?
Mm-hmm.
You and I tend to agree this is going to come down to a level above everybody else in which it's whatever they call themselves, but currently it's the Big 12, it's the Big 10 and the SEC, either as they stand or growing. And it's going to be 40, 42, 48 teams, and they're going to be on the top shelf. We kind of agree with that.
Yeah.
Which then means, currently your FBS Power 5 is 69 teams, I believe. Because you have
if you're adding in the teams that are coming into the Big 12,
right,
like so the Cincinnati and BYU and etc.
If you go 40 to 48, you're displacing 29 to 21 teams. I don't know if that's enough to start your own subdivision, in between the group of 5 and that Big 12 SEC conglomerate. God, man, Big 10 SEC conglomerate. So do you have a 21 to 29 team division that's just below but also above the rest of the group of 5? Or do you have a split that's those 21 to 29 teams, 28 teams, whatever, plus the best of the rest from the group of 5, and then a third FBS subdivision that's not quite there? I just wonder if we're going to have. Right now we have FBS and FCS. I wonder if you're going to have FBS 1-2 and FBS 1-2-3 or whatever before the FCS. That seems so unusual, but also to some extent so inevitable too.
Yeah, I think it's going to be. I don't know if that was the latter choice you gave me there, but the teams that don't quote unquote make the cut for this 48 or 40 or whatever it is, those teams essentially become group of 5 teams. They are in that other tier of FBS. So yeah, I think it becomes the Premier League, the FBS, and the FCS is how it's going to look at eventually.
There's also a system in which some of those FCS teams come up too. Look at James Madison, for example. Would North Dakota State want to jump up? Could you do something like that? This whole thing maybe is subject to change now. Especially the NCAA is no longer involved in it. They're really not now when it comes to football. But if you see a complete separation, I wonder if some of these FCS teams say, wait a second, we'd love to be free of these chains and tethers. Let's go up and try to make this happen. That could happen here too. It's a weird new world, and it could be there before you know it too. I just can't continue to watch the Big Ten and the SEC launch these precision strikes that take the pillars from major conferences and think that they're okay with leaving the ACC standing, especially when the ACC is, I don't know, they're not happy with their TV arrangement. They can't figure out what to do with Notre Dame. Notre Dame suddenly Notre Dame continues to have all the face cards here and can pretty much do what it wants. It's imminent decision, I would think, to join the ACC or the Big 12. Might not
Big
be
Ten,
imminent,
Big
but
Ten.
man, I'm having a tough time with this today.
If you're saying Notre Dame in the Big 12, we need to put a breaking label on this podcast and post it everywhere.
I'm not even editing these. This is going to make me authentic for how confusing this is. But again, if they're being pressed to make a decision about the ACC or the Big Ten, I don't know if they're necessarily going to do that, because I don't know if you know what you're getting with the ACC, although that might be a better situation for them. But I think people forget, like 15 years ago, they thought they were going to have a future in the Big Ten. Like Mike Bray talked about it one time, where like he went to bed thinking they were going to wake up in the morning and go to a press conference saying they were going to the Big Ten. So it's something they've considered before, and they could again. We'll see. I don't know, but so let's operate here, Chris, on how this might look, because this will kind of illuminate West Virginia's situation and what I think is going to be something for a lot of people to consider. That room that has 40 to 48 chairs, I think 48 is probably too ambitious, and I think you'll see why in a minute. Um, you could put a lot of people in there, but you're going to reach a cut line in that room of 40 to 48 people where the end of the line is going to look at this and say, this doesn't make sense. We're not going to win a national championship in this company. We're not going to be able to compete even with our $100-something million annual payouts. We're not going to be able to, do what, I don't know, 15, 20 of these teams in the same room are going to do. Might we be better off in that division below from us? And like, that sounds bizarre, but I think that's something that you're going to have discussions about if you're an athletic director or chancellor or president. Like, hey, is this realistic? Is this the best allocation of our expenses and our revenue? And by the way, we're also a university that has academic missions. I think it's a fascinating conversation to see who's in the room of the 40 to 48 people and who maybe backs out of it or who doesn't want entry because you're just not going to compete and win. And what are you doing at that point? If you're playing for championships that aren't attainable, might your life be better at a lower level where you can win the championships and maybe you don't make as much money, but you still have plenty of money. Like, I think people are forgetting you're still making 50, 60, 70, maybe $1 million in the future here. It's still a good life, but like you're going to be more successful at that lower level, although maybe not quite as rich, but not as successful at the higher level.
I think maybe that's going to be more important than maybe a lot of people thought prior to some of what's been happening lately, because I believe, and this was reported, my expertise on UCLA is not quite what it once was, I guess, but they were broke, like UCLA, like that is not broke, but like their athletic department was in a bad situation prior to this move. And that was part of what played such a factor into this. And you have to wonder how many other programs, given the NIL moves, all this shuffling around teams, COVID. I mean, that we talked about that a lot, about with the COVID shutdowns and everything that went on with the pandemic and cancellation of sports and everything with that, how that affected schools financially. How many schools maybe are not as well off as you might think they are, given all the TV money? Maybe they aren't actually just rolling in the dough, or maybe they are, but want to act like they're not. Because this is, as you put it, this is big business. This is not, your grandfather's college football program. This is a business that requires hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars worth of spending over the course of let's say a decade.
Then you got to build stadiums, facilities.
Mm-hmm.
Sooner or later, you're going to have to pay for your private jets.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just going to keep going and going and going, especially as the money is available. Like, well, you're making $110 million. Why can't you have your own jet? Why can't you pay for your own pilots? Like, this sounds weird, but like, what's weird now is probably not going to be so weird in the future. And I think that probably extends the conversation about the conferences. Here's what we'll do, Chris.
Okay.
Let's look at how let's just say a 40 team super league looks like, Premier League as you called it. Um, we'll limit it to 40 because I think this is kind of a fun number. 48, it kind of gets crazy, I guess, but you have your 69 Power 5 teams right now. And you would think, well, easy to get to 40. It's not. That was kind of striking. And I'm drafting this list based on ultimately, like there's going to be a front of the line and a middle of the line, but ultimately you're going to have a back of the line where the schools go, I don't know about this. Like, is it realistic? Do I want to do it? And there are some names out there that like are going to be shocking. I think that you might think would not be in it. And then there's going to be like a number of teams who are on the cusp that how do they get in? What would they have to do between now and that moment of decision? Whether they're invited or they say yes or no to an invitation, we'll see. But like, it's an interesting exercise that I think will give people an idea that maybe it doesn't look great, but maybe it doesn't look hopeless either. I hope that makes sense. So um, let's just start with the SEC, for example.
Okay.
You think everybody from the SEC automatically goes into the Super League?
I think the first time I looked at it immediately, I was like, Vanderbilt probably just says, hey, you know what? Thanks, but no thanks. We're going to focus on our academics, focus on our other school. They're obviously very good at baseball, basketball, a lot of other sports, varsity level sports, but football has never been their thing. It's not a money loser for them, but is it worth them trying to keep up with what's going to happen in that league? And I have to think that the answer is no for them.
I think that's probably accurate, right?
Yeah, but after that, I don't know. Is it 15 of the other 16? I'm counting Texas and Oklahoma already in for right now for what I had on my sheet here. But is that where we're at?
I think you could have a conversation, for example, about like this is where things get riveting. What about Missouri?
Right.
Missouri's not winning a national title in a league that's just 39 other teams that are better than them, right?
Yeah.
That's an interesting one. What about South Carolina?
Yeah. Like I think that's the question that so many teams are going to have to ask themselves.
What
Do
about
we
Kentucky?
go on this arms race just to finish
Yeah.
37th out of 40 teams,
Yeah.
35th out of 40 teams?
So what are you doing? And then what is that doing to your other teams that aren't competing either that are hurting? So like I'm just gonna go alphabetically here. Alabama, Arkansas, Auburn, Florida, Georgia. Absolutely, I think. Arkansas, bit of a conversation, but I think that's probably gonna happen there. Kentucky, I'm not sure about. Um, LSU, yeah. I had questions, but I said yes to Ole Miss and Mississippi State. But I have questions about Mississippi State. That was the last one I put in as like a guaranteed. I could take that as a no, or as a come back and check. Missouri, nope. South Carolina, nope. Tennessee, yes. Texas A&M, yes. Vanderbilt, but like, there's your 16 when you add Texas and Oklahoma, which are obvious yeses. But a third of those teams, quarter of those teams, maybe don't want a seat at the table or don't get a seat at the table there.
Right.
Crazy. Um, let's go to the Big Ten.
Okay.
And again, we'll just go alphabetically here, and you tell me what you think. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Illinois.
I think they're having a discussion and leaning no, honestly.
I'm with you. Indiana's a no, right?
Right.
Iowa.
Discussion, but leaning yes.
I had them as a yes, but I could see the conversation at least starting. But I could see them coming out there and being like, "What were we thinking?" Yeah,
Yeah, right.
yeah. Maryland.
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
Because I think they probably have the money and the backers, and they're in an area that should have the financial means to stay. But what has their football support been like over the years? It wanes when they are not a top tier team. Their support wanes, which is what a lot of schools do. But we're talking about the top, again, 25 to 40 programs out there. Are they one of the top 40 programs as far as financial means and fan support? I think the answer to that is no. But they're in such a rich area of the country that they should be able to stick to it without, taking a loss. But I just don't know if it's worth it.
I have them as a no.
Okay.
But again, I think that's you're going to have to get to 40. You would come back to them if you had
Right.
that. We'll explain that in a minute. Michigan, yeah. Michigan State, yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Minnesota.
A discussion, and I don't know about their financial situation and stuff at Minnesota. I mean, I know they're a large State University and everything, but leaning,
Just not winning a national title though.
right, yeah.
Yeah. Nebraska.
Again, what were you saying about and I guess we'll circle back on them circling back, but
Yeah.
maybe that's one of those teams that's like, hey, you don't make the first wave, like a Hall of Fame ballot. Hey, you don't get in on that first time, but maybe second, third time, fourth, fifth time, or the old timers league put you in. We'll see. We'll discuss it later.
The Veterans Committee is what you're saying?
Right. There you go. Veterans Committee gets
right.
gets the Minnesota in.
All right. Nebraska, yes.
Uh-huh.
Northwestern, no.
Right. I had Northwestern out.
Ohio State, Penn State.
Mm-hmm.
Purdue.
I was leaning no.
Yeah. Rutgers.
Oh,
really? Okay.
No, I mean, my first immediate answer was no, but then it come back to just, again, similar situation to Maryland. There's a reason they were coveted, maybe too strong of a word, but there's a reason that the Big Ten wanted them in the first place. And I think that might carry over to, again, circling back with the Veterans Committee when they only got 38 yeses and they're like, hey, Rutgers, how about that New York market again? Come on. And so, but I'm leaning no for them.
Yeah. Then again, this thing might be so big you don't have to worry about Metro or New York City. So what do they bring into it? I'm not sure. Finally, Wisconsin. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're in. All right. So real quick because I got my spreadsheet going. Out of the SEC with the 16, counting Oklahoma and Texas, we said 12 were definites.
Yeah, I did not have Kentucky, Missouri, South Carolina, Vanderbilt.
Okay, so we have 12 definites, and we can circle back on the maybes later. The Big Ten, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 definites. That was it?
Correct.
And then are we going to let's go. All
so
right.
19 out of 40 out of those two leagues, right?
And then add in USC and UCLA. I'm trying to keep with the times here. So 9 with the new Big Ten.
Okay. 21 out of the 40. And we've only gone through 2 of the 5 Power 5 leagues, right? So you figure this would be a piece of cake. It's not a piece of cake. And here's why. Let's go to the ACC.
Yeah.
Boston College.
I know. As someone who lived in Boston and who originated the Boston College site for 24/7 Sports, I can assure you that Boston College football ranks 4th. I mean, literally, it's basketball, it's hockey, lacrosse is up there. If you live in Boston, you're more interested in every single professional team more than Boston College. Even if you're outside of Boston and don't even like the Celtics, the Bruins, the Red Sox, etc., you might be more interested in BU, in Boston University. You might be more interested in some of the other teams around there with their hockey than you would be in Boston College football. I do not think they have the money or support to even think about it.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Clemson.
Yes.
Duke.
That's a tough one.
Really? I just said no.
I was going to say, I think, what's throwing me off here with this, because I think football-wise, the answer is definitively no. I'm trying to think of it. So real quick, one clarification. This is football only conference quote changes, right? Like everything else, they would still be playing ACC basketball.
I think so, but man, I'm not sure how this is going to work. But I just think you're going to see football as a separate entity that doesn't have anything to do with an NCAA.
But like how West Virginia plays in different conferences for soccer and different things like that. So that's what I wanted to make sure of, because again, I go back to those discussions about, why is Kansas such a, not a pearl, but why are they talking about Kansas going to some other conferences? It's because of basketball. So would the same be true for Duke?
I get you. I would say that it's just a football decision right now.
Okay, then no.
Okay. Florida State.
Yes.
Georgia Tech.
No.
That's a national championship program. And I would agree with you too. Louisville.
No.
Miami.
Yes. I think
North Carolina.
That's a tougher one, because I think that one has a little more football to it than Duke does. You're not relying solely on basketball. And I might lean yes. I think honestly, I think pride is going to step in for a couple of these programs, and that is one of them.
I'm with you. I thought hard about them. but I gave them the nod.
Okay.
NC State.
Mm.
I said no.
Okay. Yeah, that's a tough one because we're getting to a group here. Well, I know you're going alphabetical order, so I don't know if we're coming up on that group yet or not. Yeah, we are. I think I'm not good at
Yeah.
letters, but
There's some crazy schools coming up.
yeah, like this NC State, Virginia Tech, UVA kind of realm here is going to be something.
But Pitt, I just don't see it. Never mind the tradition. I just don't see that being a part of it or them winning a national championship in the setup.
No, I don't think they would be able to pull it off. I think it would be tough for them because how long can you rely on what happened 40 years ago for this kind of stuff?
And a long time. I've seen this.
Yes, but as far as this is concerned, as far as like the committee that's forming this league, like, hey, you guys were great back when Dan Marino was playing there. You guys should probably join.
Yeah. Speaking of tradition, Syracuse.
Right. That's a no for me for similar reasons.
Virginia is, to me, like a watered down North Carolina. I would just say no on Virginia.
Mm-hmm. Watered down North Carolina. I cannot wait. My wife, a UNC grad, and several of my friends, UVA grads. I cannot wait to say that at the next get together, Mike.
Most interesting here in this group, I think, is Virginia Tech.
Yeah.
Are you in on them or out on them?
I'm discussing it and might be leaning yes.
Okay.
Just because I think I know, again, I don't think either side wants to hear this, but I think they are so similar to West Virginia as far as where they stand in like the history of college football and how their fans view their program and the support they have, that I think for the same reasons, not to spoil what's coming up later, like West Virginia might be discussion and leaning towards yes, even though maybe it's better suited for no. And I think Virginia Tech's in the same boat.
Wake Forest.
No.
Notre Dame.
Oh, yes.
So now we have our running total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're at 27?
Yeah, I had 6 in the ACC. Okay.
27. So we got 13 left. 2 conferences, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's go Pac-12. Arizona?
No. I mean,
I'm with you. Arizona State?
No.
Cal?
No, I don't think they'd even like it. It would be almost their choice. Like I think like they would want like a couple of these schools. Like I think like the committee that's putting this together would want a school like Cal or Stanford, and they would say, no, you know what, we're focused on other stuff. Thanks.
I agree. Colorado.
No.
Again, national champion.
Yeah.
And you would say no. Oregon.
Yes.
I thought there might be a discussion there, but yeah, I'm with you. It wasn't that much of a discussion for me. But
no, that Nike money will guarantee it.
Yep. Oregon State.
I mean, are we doing the you have to bring your little brother to the party too thing?
No, and just not win a national championship. Sorry.
Right.
Stanford.
I think they're no. I think they say, hey, we are, what is it called? The Commander's Cup or whatever it is with all the varsity sports. And they say, hey, we dominate in that almost every year. We're going to focus on the 500 other varsity sports we have.
Utah.
No.
Washington.
Nope.
Washington State.
Nope.
Unbelievable. 3 schools in the Pac-12 and 2 now belong to the Big Ten.
Yep.
So we're at 30? No, I'm sorry. We're
28. Yeah, because we counted the UCLA and USC in the Big Ten.
Okay. Now we have the Big 12, which has 12 teams, right? So this is going to have to go 12 for 12 to get to 40. And guess what? It doesn't, because you start with Baylor.
Nope.
Iowa State.
Nope.
Kansas.
Nope.
Kansas State.
Nope.
Oklahoma State.
Maybe.
Come back, right? Veterans Committee.
Right.
TCU.
Nope.
Texas Tech.
Nope.
West Virginia.
I'm in the same boat as I was with them with Virginia Tech. I think they push hard for it and they want to get into it, even though maybe it's in their best interest not to be in it.
Okay. Cincinnati.
No.
BYU.
No.
Houston.
No.
UCF.
No.
BYU might have a conversation.
Yeah. Oh, I think you know what? I guess if they fought so hard for so long to try to get in somewhere with something, maybe they don't pass up on this opportunity.
So we have 28.
29.
29. Who's
Right? At
29?
30 if you count BYU.
Who's 29?
West Virginia.
Okay. So you put them in?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to say 28.
Okay.
And here's why. I'm going to take West Virginia out, but I'm not omitting them because now you have a pool, and I'm not going to write these down, but is West Virginia a top 12 school in this group? BC, Duke, Georgia Tech, Louisville, NC State, Pitt, Syracuse, Virginia, Wake Forest, Illinois, Indiana, Maryland, Minnesota, Northwestern, Purdue, Rutgers. The rest of the Big 12, Arizona, Arizona State, Cal, Colorado, Oregon State, Stanford, Utah, Washington, Washington State, Kentucky, Missouri, South Carolina, Vanderbilt. So we had 28.
Yep.
There's a lot of schools there. Let me see in my head, 69, 41 schools I just read.
Right.
Is West Virginia in the top 12 there?
As far as football program history, success, fan support, yes.
Mm-hmm. If this super conference had 12 invitations to hand out, would one of them say West Virginia? I think so.
Yeah. I mean, again, because I think to your point earlier when I made the comment about Rutgers, like the TV market is not a thing, and it's a thing, but not a big thing anymore. And so I think you're going to be more focused on brands, which West Virginia is up there with that, with the way they branded their program and their fan support. And I think for that reason, West Virginia would be in there.
Okay. Who do you think would be leading the 12? Like, I think there's a really good argument for, we have Virginia Tech in, right? Okay.
Yeah.
I think there's a really good argument for BYU, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Has behaved like a Power 5, has had traditionally some pretty good teams. I would think that Kentucky would probably want in.
Yeah.
I would think that Washington would want in. I would think that Georgia Tech would want in.
So we're going with any team that's won a national championship in the last 50 years.
See, but that's my thing. But how much does that mean? Which leads me to this too. Like, and this is why it gets to be such a tricky thing for West Virginia and this conversation. We mentioned this before, where they have been better off winning a national title in 1998, or excuse me, 1988 or 1993. Remember that podcast? Very
Yeah, or no, 2007, 88 or 2007.
Okay, that's right. Yeah, sorry, my bad. So they had that conversation. I don't even remember. That's how riveting it was. But 88, 93, 2007, they were in the thick of it. Twice in close proximity, and then once, not quite a generation later, but certainly some time later in the grand scheme of things, 14 years. When you look at what happened after, and this is what we enumerated too, what happened after the 88 to 93, that's 5 years. That's pretty good. And they weren't the best 5 years in between, but they got back to it. Again, right in the conversation in 93. It didn't work out very well. 93 to 2007 is a longer time. And what happened after 2007 didn't capitalize on it. And then what happened when they got into the Big 12 after that Orange Bowl season didn't quite capitalize on it. If they win a national title, if they play for a national title in 07, if they win one of the ones in 88 or 2007, maybe this whole conversation is different. And like I point you to Clemson. Clemson has a national championship prior to its recent run of success, but worked and got itself to the stage that it prevailed on, got into the playoff, won a national championship. If they don't do that some years ago, if they fire Dabo after the Orange Bowl, or he, Furter's out and he's gone to make a coach change and don't get in there, quite likely Clemson's not in this conversation, right?
Right.
And then we're talking about Washington, Colorado, Georgia Tech, schools that have won national titles but haven't done anything lately, and they're not in the conversation. So tradition and history for like a program like Syracuse or Pittsburgh, that's great stuff for decorating your stadium. It doesn't grant you access to this exclusive club right now, too. And that's what's so strange, because now, like, you talk about West Virginia, hey, I forget what it is, 14th, 15th winningest program of all time. I think number one for most wins, that a national title. But what does it mean? We're talking about if they're one of the best 12 teams that's left outside the inner circle. And if you are, do you want to be invited to and then accepted by that inner circle? Or are you better off being like, you know what? We've done okay outside of here, trying to get into that inner circle. We've never made it. Let's take 2 steps back. Let's join this other circle and let's see if we can actually get to the mountaintop, so to speak. Sorry. If they can prevail in ways they'd never had before, I think that's a decision that would not be a terrible one. It alters the course of athletics and maybe finances in some regard. I'm just not sure it's a bad idea.
One more clarification I need here that might shape my decision if I were an athletic director or president or whoever's making these decisions. Do I still, if I am not part of this, like we're saying this is completely separate. Like this isn't, hey, that group of 5 team, if they go 13-0 and really just run through it, they might still have a chance to play in a bowl game or the playoff, right? Like this
Correct.
is, if you're not in, you are out.
Yeah, there's no like, we're going to take the best 6 teams from the 2 super conferences and give you 2 wild cards from the rest.
Right.
Like there's going to be a specific playoff for just the whatever you want to call Big Ten SEC.
Okay.
And then the West Virginias and the people who are not in that 40. I'm using West Virginia just to continue my previous conversation, but those schools we mentioned that are not in the top 40 or that are in that top 28, 29 as you had it, but don't accept the invitation in. They're good enough to get invited, but they don't want in. Again, that could be Stanford, for example, or Cal, like you said. I think those are good points. They might say no, but like that second cut, they would have their own structure. They'd have their own regular season. They'd have their own playoff. I have questions about the existence or the number of bowl games in either division at this point in the future, because it seems like you could have a full-blown playoff if you have 40 or 20 something teams, or you could do something with it to make it work. But yeah, to answer your question, there's gonna be a wall between these for sure.
Well, then I think that would affect my decision. Then, if I'm one of those teams, not the committee that's inviting the teams, but if I were a team that was receiving an invitation and I was on the fence about it, that makes me lean yes, even if it might be, even if I think like the way it goes and the way we've seen it go in college football, the trends that we have seen over the years, when it was just bowl games and that was that, there was a little more interest in the season and what was happening with these teams and where they were going. And the more we focused on just a 4-team playoff or just the BCS national championship, RIP, that's where the focus became. And that's where the eyeballs went. That's where the fans went. That's where the money went. So if you are not part of this team, even though it's, hey, you're going to end up 34th out of 40, 8 out of the 10 years, that still might be better than being, number 5 in that second tier, like being the 5th best team in that's whatever we're calling the second tier of college football at that point. Because I think that there's just this tendency from fans, from TV networks, from big donors to focus and funnel their money towards the top of this sport. And if you are not part of that 40 and you had the opportunity to be part of that 40, it might be worth it to say, hey, this is a risk and we might not end up, top 5, but we'll stay relevant just because we are a part of this.
It's just a fascinating topic to discuss because I can see logic to everything you're saying. And again, you can't say no to $100 million, especially when the alternative is, I don't know what it's going to be, half, 2/3. Like that's a significant chunk of money to go away from, and you're not going to recoup it by being, the second tallest team, in the field. Like you're just not going to, like, you're not going to make up the extra $25 million in guaranteed games or your playoffs revenue or anything like that. There's going to be a disparity because that's why there's a separation in the first place. You're not quite good enough there, but you're not chasing those teams anymore. That's the other part about it now too. If you're in that second cut and you're not in that top 40, what that top 40 makes, you're not really concerned with anymore because you're not competing against them. So you're more concerned about making more money or the same amount of money as everybody who's in your current level. So the dynamics change too, and the points that do pry the haves and have-nots apart right now and threaten to splinter this thing in a way that leaves it beyond repair they don't really exist in the future, which is kind of a different way to look at it, but actually will make some sense to people, I think, when they actually sit down and do this. And I think these are going to be conversations people have too. Like I've talked to one person who's in this stuff, and I think I showed you the screenshot, right, of who it was.
Mm-hmm.
Like knows what this person is talking about, and is of that mind that, would a Stanford, would a Washington, would a Cal, I'm just looking at the Pac-12 here, would a West Virginia, Virginia Tech, or Virginia, a UNC be like, this doesn't make sense. Like, we have tradition, we have success, we have resources, but even with $100 million, we're not going to win a national title. Even if we get there or close, can we stay there? I don't know. And then the other part about this is if these two conferences splinter off and do their own thing, they create their own rules. And if they've got $100 million, what can they do with that? Can they have unlimited coaching staffs? Probably. You may see that in the NCAA soon. Put a pin in that. I'll come back to that in a second. What about scholarship limits? Would you have them? Would you have 85 or would it be 100? And then if these schools can afford 100 scholarships, what does that do to the level of the schools that aren't in the top 40? Who are they getting? Like, there's not going to be that many players if you have 100 scholarships for 40 schools. That's 400 players. ESPN has a top 300. 24/7 has a top 247, right? They're all going to the top 40 schools if you have 100 scholarships, right? So it's a crazy thing to think about there. Like, you're talking, I mean, thousands of players that are going to the top cut of schools, and then you're left trying to figure out what to do because you can't afford 100 scholarships. You can afford maybe 90, maybe 95. Maybe you can do a little bit more, but just the arms race is always going to stay there. But then again, conversely, what do you care what the higher division is doing, because you're not competing against it anymore? If you just have 85 or you just have 90, how are you allocating your 85 or 90 compared to your peers at your level too? So there may be a separation. There is a separation now. What's different in the future is that you wouldn't care about the separation above you or below you, as long as you are doing everything you can to maximize the restrictions that you're working with.
What do we say about some of this coaching stuff? What do you always say? I'm glad I don't have to make these decisions. The money's nice, but the work, no thanks.
I love the paycheck and I hate the job.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, imagine. I mean, this is what you're in right now too. I mean, this is kind of what it's going to be, and I just think we're headed towards something that's going to resemble this far more than it resembles what we have right now. And the big question is, how do you get there?
And when do we get there?
Who's the first school, the first block of schools that says, I don't want part of this? And then what type of damage does that do to that school on the field, in the industry of athletics or academics? Like, that's a heck of a march to lead, but you figure someone's going to do it. And perhaps it comes to television. I just don't know. Like, if the Pac-12 has its rights marketed out right now, and all of a sudden ESPN and Fox aren't interested because they're fixated upon the SEC and the Big Ten, that might be like a knocker over the head that wakes some of these people up and say, this is just not for us anymore. This is obviously going towards two conferences and a smaller number of schools than we have right now. Perhaps we should think about something different too. That would be interesting. A lot going on here. A lot of balls moving, a lot of plates spinning.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe you can ask about it at Big 12 Media Days.
I will be there. I will probably not be asking the commissioner that one because I'm not sure he has the answer. Sir, would you like to break free from the FBS? What's your name,
try it
Mike?
with the new guys. New guys are trying to make a wave. You never know.
We'll see. Anyways, perhaps a useful formative discussion. It's lengthy. It's a lot of schools and names and lists and things like that. But listen, there's not 40 schools out there that can do this without the help from schools that may or may not want to be a part of it, or may not be desired. But if you're going to get to 40, you're going to have to maybe twist some arms and talk some people into it. But conversely, you may have some people in that second cut to get to 40 that don't want to think about it. It's kind of a fascinating conversation about not only what is the future going to look like, but how do these schools arrive at their decisions, and how do we get to the ultimate destination? I don't know. One way to find out is to stay tuned. This is I believe it's fluid, Chris.
It's a fluid situation.
Fluid situation, as they all are. I don't know. We'll just keep riding this and see where it goes. We'll be like water and take it where it leads us. Until then, I'm Mike Casaza.
And I'm Chris Anderson.
We'll talk to you next time.